Welcome to another episode of Talking Nerdy in the Bedroom with
Corey,
KJ,
and Mike.
This week we're going to be talking about Lord of the Rings, and this week we have Corey back in the studio. He decided to actually get off his ass and show up. Yay, Corey.
I gotta go.
Probably. So, yeah, this week is all going to be about Lord of the Rings, but before we talk about Lord of the Rings, let's talk about the thing that preceded it, which was The Hobbit. Now, I read
Did it
this...
technically precede it, though?
Yes.
No, I mean, chronologically, yes, but not. It was the Lord of the Rings was written first,
Right.
The book, The Hobbit, was written in 1937, and the Lord of the Rings book was released in 1954, so go fuck yourself.
That doesn't make any sense.
The Hobbit was first. Hobbit was always first.
Why didn't they make the Hobbit movie first, then?
I do not know that, but I know that The Hobbit came out.
Oh, I think
20
he's
plus
right,
years.
but I
Of
think
course I am.
I think the Lord of the Rings books were written first, and then Tolkien had to release The Hobbit first because the publisher thought that that's what would get more mass appeal. And then eventually, because The Hobbit was successful, he was able to release Lord of the Rings series.
Wasn't
But
the
he wrote
Hobbit...
Lord of the Rings when he was in, the trenches in World War One.
The Hobbit, though, is like... The one book is like the whole series of movies, right? Like, if you read The Hobbit, it's the whole thing from
Yes.
leaving the Shire
Well, and
to...
they add stuff in the movies.
In the movies,
to
they
make
do.
extra content.
Because they wanted to do 3 movies out of it just because of how much money and how well received the Lord of the Rings trilogy
if
was.
So there's
made
stuff that's not in the book that's in the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You should
yeah.
say the way around.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Well, if they made like a book based on the movie, you know how they do that when there's like Star Wars, Clone Wars has like a book that came out after the movie.
Mm-hmm.
If they did that, it'd just be like The Search for More Money would be the second and the third one because that's all the only reason they made 3. And it's funny because the Lord of the Rings, they did the opposite. It was 3 books, and Peter Jackson went to New Line Studios, and tried to pitch 2 movies because he was like, they'll never agree to 3, but maybe I can get them to do 2 instead of 1. And New Line came back and was like, why would we do 2 when there's 3 here? So I don't know, just interesting. And then The Hobbit, they were just like, yeah, let's do as many as we can.
Well, I think part of it was the fact that there was 3 before, and they were like, well, if we did 3 for that one, we can easily do 3 for this one, and look at all the dollar signs that we're gonna get.
I think it was just the dollar signs.
Well, that's my point. They saw the dollar signs because the other one did 3.
Yeah.
But it easily could have been 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Like, I remember reading it in school, The Hobbit, and also seeing the animated version of it. That's how my first experience into The Hobbit was. So, back to that was my original question before Corey was so unbelievably wrong. What was you guys' first experience with The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings? Was it in school where you had to read it? Was you guys reading it on your own? Was it just the movies? Where are your guys' experience? Mike?
I definitely just started with the movies. I have not read the books.
Did you know there were books?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was not in the English class that had to read that. We read something else instead. I don't even remember what book I was supposed to read, but yeah, we were not in the class that had to read The Hobbit. The book sounded good. Everybody that's read it liked it, and then I saw Lord of the Rings, and it was really good. I'm just, like I said, I'm surprised that they didn't come out with The Hobbit first, then The Lord of the Rings. I guess it doesn't make sense,
I
especially
think
where they came out with the book first.
Yeah, I think the Lord of the Rings just is more cinematic. Like, The Hobbit was kind of more kiddie. Now, granted, they took it in a slightly different direction in the movies, but
big direction during the movies.
But
They
like-
tried to make it more cinematic.
yeah, Lord of the Rings is like much more of an epic story.
Right.
So I think that's probably why they went with those ones.
Makes sense.
And
Yeah.
probably also because there were 3 books, so you could do 2 or 3 movies rather than 1 book, which if you went before the success of the Lord of the Rings and you went to them about doing a movie, you'd probably only do 1.
True.
Yeah. So a little bit more of an adventure, a little bit more of a quest that you get from 3 books than you got from 1 book.
Does Peter Jackson do The Hobbit too?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
does all 6 movies?
Sure
But he's
did.
not doing Rings of Power, right?
Correct.
No, yeah.
Yeah, no, he's
Uh-oh.
not.
That's why it
doing
looks
Power.
worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not... I have super high expectations of it.
See, the good thing is after watching the preview, my expectations have gone down. So like now I might actually like it because of that. Whereas if I had just gone in with the expectations where they were at before, I think, maybe I would have been let down.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about the previews. Like, some of the previews looked fine, but it's more going to come down to the story
I just think it looks cinematically, it just looks worse.
than the movies.
Yeah,
Well, part of that's because it's not a movie.
I understand that, but look at Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was right up there cinematically, and Lord of the Rings spent more money than Game of Thrones. So I don't know.
Why didn't they get Peter Jackson to do the series? Is he doing something else?
I don't know. And maybe he doesn't direct TV, he just does movies, or maybe he just wanted to be done with it. That's a lot of time out of his life between 6 movies.
Well, true, but how many movies has Steven Spielberg produced?
You're not wrong, but look at the
Directed.
guy who just directed all the newest Spider-Man movies. He did No Way Home, he did
Sam Raimi?
Far
Oh, no. Sam
Far
Raimi
From
did
Home.
the other one.
and he did Homecoming, and now he's taking a break rather than he was supposed to direct the new Fantastic Four movie, but he wanted a break because he's just been directing. So at a certain point, people tap out for a while. So it could be that,
Well,
or
I
just
saw-
Hobbit
something
has
done with
not
it.
was a long time ago when it came out.
I know, but it could also just be I want a break from this story. Like, I've done this enough. My mark is on this.
But you got Amazon money.
Yeah, a lot of Amazon.
Hey man,
money.
like you did a really good job, and I'm Amazon, so do it.
$250 million just for the rights.
To do it from the Tolkien family, is that right?
I don't know exactly who they bought it from.
The rights from the grandson of something or granddaughter is the one that has the estate.
Grandson, Christopher Tolkien. I thought that's his grandson. Yeah.
I don't know. One of the grandkids has the estate, and
Yeah, I think it's Christopher Tolkien. I think he actually,
anything has to be signed off through them too. So like
or maybe that's his son.
Amazon bought the rights to produce the stuff, but I think it still had to be like verified through.
Well, it
the
just
estate.
depends because they obviously sold the movie rights a while back, and they probably lapse after a certain amount of time. I don't know if they sold TV rights. That might have been separate. So they might have only had to pay the Tolkien estate for the rights to the TV. But if another, studio owned the rights to the TV, they would have had to pay them.
How long does someone have a copyright on the
Depends
stuff?
on their.
Right? Is it 100 years?
Oh, you mean before it becomes a classic and
Yeah.
then they can do whatever?
Like Winnie the Pooh, they just came out with a horror. You see that?
Yeah.
Because the Winnie the Pooh
So,
copyright ended.
This is primarily based on the appendices of The Lord of the Rings, which included discussions of the Second Age, and per the requirements of the Amazon deal with the Tolkien estate, it is not a continuation of The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films.
Well, right. It's a prequel.
But I think that's part of the reason that it's this is because it's part of the deal. So it's about the before.
Yeah.
So they don't have to potentially look at paying the studios, the New Line Cinema and whoever else, as a continuation. This is its own thing by itself, just based in the Tolkien universe. We just are going to associate it with those other 6 movies.
well,
Because of course we are.
it meets the universe. Well, before they talk about it in the movies, though, like the rings being forged. I'm pretty sure in this show you're going to see the rings being forged
From
and
clips
given out.
from that thing, or are they going to refilm it themselves?
Well, from the spoilers of the show.
No, I get that, but even if they just do that, that's just part of the story in general.
And what about the Great War at the end? That's in one of the movies.
The Great War in the end. You're talking about the flashback
Sauron,
of it.
the Sauron loses the ring.
Right. I don't know. But this is just, it's supposed to be from before so that they don't have to line up with the movies exactly.
Well, I mean, we already know they're going to have characters that are in both Lord of the Rings and this.
Sure.
Because they have Galadriel and Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Agent Smith.
We don't know he's in it.
Yeah, he is.
I thought we just were talking. Well, we were talking about this last week with Casey.
Pretty
And-
sure I saw him in the trailer.
I didn't see him in the trailer.
Well, not the actor, but I think that you see somebody
The
say
character.
Yeah, the
that's-
character.
okay.
And then they say
And
his
that's
name.
what we were talking
Well, yeah,
about.
Galadriel's not in it either. Kate
Mike's
Blanchett.
not very happy if it's not the same actor playing it.
Well, it's not any of the same actors.
Well, thank you, Corey, but it could be if they wanted it to be.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird too because it seems like they're younger looking actors, and it's like they're trying to do, like, you know, when you have a prequel and there's a younger, you know, a kid actor or something, but they're elves. They don't age like that, so it's weird that it's not gonna be like. I can understand why Mike's
Although The
upset.
Hobbit does that in the Lord of the Rings,
What do
which
you mean?
I didn't
Right. Bilbo.
I didn't love, but I like it more now that I've seen it a couple times.
Old Bilbo versus young Bilbo.
Right.
They kind of had that same different actor aspect of it where, yeah, I could see why somebody might not like it, but then get used to it. But now you're talking about a whole list of characters that could be different.
Well, and it's also different because Bilbo was a halfling. They're not immortal, so it makes sense that he aged and looked different over
Well,
time.
you see his actor, like the actual actor that plays him in Lord of the Rings in the cave, doing the same thing that he did in like the Hobbit, like
Yeah,
looking the same
I'll
thing.
give you that one scene, but
Well, that's
yeah.
the only scene
I
where you
know,
see
I
young.
know.
The only scene where they could possibly have used somebody else. They didn't
get
do it.
I get it. Yeah. So that scene I can understand. I'm surprised that they didn't go back like Star Wars always does and like edit the Lord of the
Redo
Rings.
it, yeah.
Re-release it with him doing that scene. But
Although they might have gotten so much flack over Star Wars doing it, they're like, we're just going to leave this alone.
I'm gonna give a really bullcrap explanation for it in that Bilbo is having a flashback in that scene. So when he's remembering it, he's thinking of how he looks now because that's how he self-identifies at that point.
Does it work like that?
I don't know. I'm just going with it because that's the only explanation.
So what about you, Corey, about the book? Did you read the book when you were
I
growing
read
up?
The Hobbit when I was a kid, yeah, and then I don't think I read Lord of the Rings till like middle school, and then I know I reread all of them because I took my school had a class called Tolkien, and it was basically those and the
Just
Silmarillion.
Tolkien.
Token
class,
or
huh?
Tolkien?
Tolkien.
Token class.
Yeah, it was Tolkien class.
Yeah, the token
It was
class.
behind the gym. No, but yeah, it was fun.
Did you remember seeing the animated Hobbit movie?
I tried. I think when I heard they existed, I tried to watch one. I was like, oh, these are so bad.
It sounds bad.
It
Yeah.
wasn't bad when you were a kid.
No, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad.
I think I tried to watch it with the Hobbit one when I was a kid, and I remember going, "Oh yeah, this is bad."
Yeah,
I tried to watch the Lord of the Rings ones way down the road. I didn't even realize they made those as well until way
Yeah, I
later.
didn't even know they had those.
I will say the Hobbit one was probably more like,
Watchable.
yeah, because it's supposed to be really kiddie. Like the Hobbit is just geared towards kids more. So, but
So-
like seeing the Lord of the Rings like intense scenes as like cartoony ridiculousness was just awful.
So the first movie, I believe, came out in 2001.
Yep.
Is this something that you guys were excited to see? Is this something that you just went to the theater or waited for it to come out?
Yeah,
Was VHS a thing in 2001?
probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
I actually didn't see it in theaters. My friends were gonna go see it, and for some reason I couldn't make it that night. And then I was just like, well, I'm not gonna go see it by myself. So I just waited and watched it when it came out. But the other ones I went and saw, like I think I saw at midnight, like
Oh,
Two
the
Towers.
midnight showing. Yeah.
And they were like a lot of fun to see at midnight because people like dressed up and yeah, I don't know.
What about you, Mike?
I'm pretty sure I definitely watched it at home.
All of them, or just the first one?
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah,
I didn't really go to the movies that much.
You missed, like, I will say, I specifically remember in the midnight showing seeing Two Towers in the Helm's Deep battle. And that was like a great cinematic experience on a big screen because the noise and stuff when they're like stomping and yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, but then you got to deal with other people. Don't you remember seeing, was it Endgame you and I went to and the guy crying next to you? Or
Was that-
Infinity War?
Was that the one who laughed at like everything like out loud?
I think
Like
so,
he didn't
but
even laugh. He just like narrated his laugh. He was like, "That is so funny." It's like, yep.
Every time. Huh?
but
pretty
he
much.
like was crying during the end of either Infinity Game or,
Yeah, it was bad.
Infinity War or Endgame.
It was
So-
me.
Yeah.
It was actually me.
That's kind of like the
I was
price
so
you-
sad.
That's the price you pay when you go to the theaters. That you got to deal with other people.
Yeah.
But you do get the cinematic experience, and some movies need that. It adds so much more.
Corey,
to
you have a
it.
cinema at your house now.
I do.
Cinema-ish. He's got a wall that can put a big TV on. He's got one step up stadium seating.
Yeah.
How many
So
And I have 5.
how many recliners do you have in a row?
I know.
he's got what? Is it 4?
I have
4
5.
recliners? Is it 5?
5 recliners.
Yeah. I'm
That-
just saying it's not going to give you the same experience as a theater just because he doesn't have the sound set up the right way or the screen set up like a movie theater screen.
Could.
He could. He's not going to. It's Corey
Corey.
we're talking about.
Come on.
I will get surround sound put in at some point. I just gotta. They're actually left surround sound speakers in the basement. I just don't know if they work, so I gotta check.
Left? Oh, they
Yeah,
left them
they
behind?
left them. Yeah,
I thought you said
think.
just the left.
Yeah.
There's just left
You don't get the
surround
right
sound.
one,
Yeah,
just
we
those
don't-
left.
No right sound.
Were you guys, after the first movie, were you enthralled with the series? And like, hey, I need to, obviously, Corey, you went to the theater to see the next two. But like, Mike, were you like, okay, this is what I'm going to be watching now. I want to go see the next, or I want to watch the next one whenever it comes out. Or was it just, hey, the new Lord of the Rings movie's out. I guess I'll watch it.
I mean, I really like it. I really like the universe and everything. I was never like a go to the movies and watch stuff. And like probably Star Wars is the only thing that I was like, I have to watch this in the movie theaters. But I'm much more comfortable watching things at home. And I'm pretty sure when it came out, it was on just like regular DVD. So like the graphics weren't like amazing as like the
They
new
were for the
enhanced
time.
stuff. Well, yeah, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong.
But these movies also released 1 year after each other because they were filming, I think, all at the same time,
Same time,
right?
yeah.
So that makes kind of a difference
don't-
for keeping it. It's
I don't-
2001, 2002,
Yeah,
2003.
That's not what I was gonna say. Let me ask my question. I think I know the second and the third were filmed at the same time. I didn't think the first
There'd
was.
be no way to get them out in that iteration if they weren't.
I'm just saying I could have sworn that the second and the third were and the first wasn't, but I could be wrong.
But either way,
Yeah.
2001, 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
I wonder if that added to the fact of how much money the movie made. Granted, it didn't make as much as like a Marvel movie or a Star Wars or yada yada, but they made a lot of money. I'm wondering if knowing like every December we're going to get this new Lord of the Rings movie, especially after the first one, Fellowship of the Rings, blew up, that people were more excited to go, ready to see what this next chapter has to give us without having to wait 2, 3, 4 years for the next movie. And I'm
Yeah.
also curious that a lot of studios aren't doing that now. They're waiting to see how kind of like the first movie does before they sink a bunch of money into the sequel.
I wonder what would have happened if it came out like after the MCU was around, because would you see like we made these 3 movies, so now we're gonna have a spin-off focusing just on Galadriel or like a solo story of just
You're
you know,
seeing that
Aragorn.
now, though. That's the whole point of the podcast. where
I understand, but I'm just wondering, like, think of like the MCU and like how Iron Man was successful, and then all of a sudden you had Captain America, you had Thor, and now it's like, who can we make?
Sure, but it's not about who can they make. There are all these stories that are already out there, and that's what. Hang on, that's what these are. These are books, and the movies are based on these stories. If there were other Tolkien books in this universe, I would say yes, they could probably do these. Like they're making the new book, or excuse me, the new series based off of the whatchamacallit of a book to set 1,000 years in the past.
Silmarillion.
The what?
No, he's saying it's written off the appendices of Lord
There
of
it
the
is.
Rings. But I actually think most of that stuff is in the Silmarillion too. I read that
I don't know.
forever ago. That's like a history going back to before like the elves even came.
Yeah,
to
the beginning of
Middle-
time
yeah.
with Tom Bombadil and the Elder Ent.
and it's like crazy. Like it's basically they're angels, but not angels and
Yeah,
stuff. And,
demons.
yeah,
But either way,
Balrogs.
when they're going
Yeah.
off of the source material, then they're making other movies. And with the comic stuff, there's hundreds of thousands of comics. So they're then doing Iron Man, then Loki, and then Thor.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
it's
this,
like a
and then
different
that.
kind of literature. Like making the MCU is much easier getting different stories because you have hundreds of characters to choose from. Which one's the most popular? Those will be movies. Least popular, those will be TV series.
So here's a question. You said you read the books, Mike, right?
No.
No,
Oh,
he said he didn't.
Did you read the books?
I read the Hobbit books, and I think I read the first Lord of the Rings book.
So what was the biggest difference from the book to the movie that you felt they should have?
Part of the Hobbit one is hard for me because I read that back when I was in third grade, and by the time that movie came out, it's a long time removed from third grade.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings I read after the movie came out,
Yeah.
and I felt like they had adapted or changed the book because if I remember correctly, the first 100 pages of the Lord of the Rings, the first book, was almost identical to the first scenes of the movie.
Oh, the first few chapters with it being the party scene was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
right on. Yeah.
That's really all I
I
remember.
think
of
that
the
was
book
intentional.
currently.
So
Maybe to just get you to know that they're
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to be authentic to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But yeah, it was almost very, very identical to everything that was happening. But I also don't know. Again, I read it afterwards, and the cover of the book was a picture of the movie.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like the book from 1950 something. So I couldn't really compare. I didn't know if they changed it to be like the book or if this is exactly what the book was.
I think for me it was the no Tom Bombadil, which he just mentioned, was kind of crappy. Like that was like a big part of the Lord of the Rings series, and I mean, of the first book at least, and then just not even mentioned.
Yeah. I will say that at least for the movies that we got, wasn't needed.
No, but it's just a big character that they took out.
Well,
Which
that's
kinda
Game of
sucks.
Thrones.
He's also an
with,
omnipotent being, though. So, like,
Yeah, but he's sweet.
right?
meaning
but
that he's
again-
kind, or he tastes sweet, or he's awesome.
I mean, just he's a cool character. Like
Okay.
he runs around talking to trees, singing to them.
But, like, he should theoretically have the power to stop Sauron anyway.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think you're. I also don't know because a lot of the like really powerful beings were meant to not interfere with like the affairs of men.
Well, Sauron is enslaving everyone.
I understand, but I'm just saying they're not supposed to. It's like Gandalf obviously helps. but-
Treebeard does.
but
Treebeard destroys Isengard.
Yeah, but Treebeard's not one of the immortals or whatever that ain't. I don't know what they're called. There's something like there's a name for them, but they're like angels.
Luminar. Oh,
Something like that.
no.
Don't look at me.
But it's like Gandalf's name is also Mithrandir and something else too. He has like 9 names.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got nothing.
But my point is they're not supposed to like get too involved. So I think that's kind of why you see people like Tom Bombadil not getting super involved. But he's also not going to like let the hobbits get like massacred in front of him because he's not an asshole.
So I'll say in 2001, God, how old was I in 2001? 13? I think it was 13. That sounds right. I was 13. I remember falling asleep during this movie.
So he's a
Fellowship of the Rings.
Valinor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember falling asleep during Fellowship of the Rings.
Okay.
And then trying to watch it again and also falling asleep. But then for whatever reason, when I turned, I think it was like 16, I watched it again, sat through the whole thing, loved it. But apparently from 13 to 16, if I tried to watch this movie, I thought it was boring as hell. I'm not sure what changed within 3 years, but I went from thinking it was boring to loving the movie. Minus the birds not taking them the whole way.
Well, it couldn't. It'd have been pegged by the Nazgul.
Bring me as far as you can until you get pegged. You know, like, I don't know.
Pegged. Like, why are we saying pegged?
I was gonna say, I
said pegged.
This does not sound like we're actually talking about the movie
Yeah,
anymore.
what are you talking about? I was like, did the Nazgul do that? Is that one of their things? Like,
It's
That
torture
means
or
you
pleasure.
definitely don't use the birds.
But I don't know. They're just there. They came in. I mean, bring me the rest of the fucking way.
Well, they don't have to worry about the Nazgul anymore.
Better question. What's your favorite scene from each of the original movies, Lord of the Rings? So start with Fellowship.
Mike, do you have a favorite scene?
Him fighting the Balrog through like the middle of Middle Earth. There's like another planet underneath Middle Earth. Inner Earth.
When does Sean Bean die?
I mean,
In
when
the first movie
I don't know.
or second movie?
Oh, in the first movie. Yeah,
Him,
yeah,
that
yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
That whole
was
scene
cool.
where he gets corrupted, tries to take the ring, then ends up coming back and basically saving them and going down like a trooper.
Yeah.
Is
No,
a really good scene.
That is a cool scene too.
Yeah.
I also think
He gets shot by a big fucking arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cinematically, it probably doesn't hold up as much now, but at the time, I thought the scene on Weathertop when the Nazgul fight Aragorn was pretty cool. And Frodo turns himself invisible, and
Yep.
you see, like, it looked cool.
Dude,
It
some
was
of his
intimidating.
invisibility stuff, when he turned invisible and you see the whatever realm that is that he's seeing
Yeah.
things in, at least for the time, looked amazing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
I think at the time, I remember thinking, wow, that was cool. Now, having said that, I like the end scene where not just where Boromir dies, but like the fights with Aragorn fighting the guys and
Yep.
all that was cool. But yeah, I think the scene that like stood out to me back then as being like really impressive was the Weathertop fight.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
how about
second movie?
so for me, it's probably Helm's Deep, but it's specifically when they ride out and then Gandalf comes down the hill. I just thought that scene looked really cool, and then where he makes the light come
He
out.
shines out through
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Just the visual of it is like, I mean, it's religious.
Powerful.
It's religiously based, obviously, but it still just like even without knowing that context is really cool looking. So
I mean, it's probably the most cinematic shot, I feel like, in the movie.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Plus,
My-
it was just badass, like the lead up to it. Aragorn's like, "Let's ride out and meet them," and the king's like, "Well, why not? I've already fucked up so bad. Might as well go out swinging."
Mike?
Yeah, it's easily the same thing.
Yeah, it has to be for me, too, which is, I was hoping one of us would say something different.
Although,
but
is the Battle of Isengard in the second one or the third one? Does Isengard fall in the second
The
one?
Ents start destroying it in the second one, and then they confront Saruman in the third one.
Yeah, so that's probably my second favorite one. Like the Ents like throwing the rocks and
Oh,
like
yeah.
coming out of the woods. I think that's so cool.
that is a good scene. That's a really good scene.
Like just destroying Isengard.
Trying to think of the other scenes that like were close seconds. Like the fight with the wargs is okay, but not that great.
Doesn't he fight the spider too?
I don't think it's in the
Frodo
second
fight
one.
the spider?
I don't think it's in that one though.
Is it in the third one?
Yeah,
The
It's all
spiders
one
in the
story
third
to
one?
me.
I think so.
God, it's been a while since I've seen these movies.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right, so what about the third one? What if we talk about the third one for what we remember? What's your favorite scene?
When the ghosts come in and destroy everything.
Damn it, Mike. Corey?
The ghost army.
Yeah, that's kind
So
it's
I
kind
don't
of the
think-
most iconic moment.
the
I think
Ghost
it's cool.
Army isn't my favorite scene, but it is that battle. Like I love when they are fighting and they take down one of the, I think they're called Mamelukes or something, but the giant elephants.
Yeah, the Harajan.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene. I liked. I
The
liked
fighters of the south.
the Rohirrim rushing in on horseback and like the orcs thinking they're like tough shit, and then when they realize how many horse, you can just see them start to like back off and run. Because there's that one orc that's like, you know, fire, then he's just like fire at will, crap, run. Like, yeah, that was a cool scene too.
What did you guys think of Gollum?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was as good as they could have done at making the adaptation from the book. Like I had no fault with it. That the character itself was never one of my like favorite characters from the books either. But
I don't think
he had a great
supposed to
ending.
be.
no, well, I don't mean like he's like obviously he shouldn't be a popular character in the sense that he's a fan favorite.
What was his name? The actor that did the motion?
Andy Serkis.
Yeah. Did fantastic as doing the motions of him and everything.
Yeah.
And he had a great ending of dying, holding onto the ring again.
Yeah.
Was great.
Yeah.
So if we talk about these for a trilogy, and we've talked about other movies that have trilogies, where does this kind of like rank for you guys?
Number 2.
Yeah, just behind Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you go first. I'm trying to think of other trilogies right now.
So I think I actually liked this trilogy more than Star Wars, but it's only because I didn't like.
Son of
You're a
bitch.
monster.
Yeah.
I got more into these movies than I did the Star Wars movies originally. Just because I felt there was, and this you're going to talk about, like I said, 13-year-old, 16-year-old me, there was more action, there was more things happening. And in the original Star Wars
Well, Star Wars
movies,
came out in 1973.
I understand. When you
So-
compare it to, I don't look at things when I'm 13.
You weren't 13 when that movie came out.
No,
bud.
but when I'm 13 and watching them over and over, like I'm going to pick a Lord of the Rings movie because there seemed to be more going on. It was more modernized, even though it's based in the past / fantasy world. But yeah, for me, I had placed those over the Star Wars, just the original 3. But I still think the second Star Wars movie is the best movie out of all of them. Out of
Return of
all
the Jedi?
6. Yeah.
I mean,
No,
Empire
No,
Strikes
Empire
Back,
Strikes
yeah.
Back. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd probably go Star Wars then Lord of the Rings. Honestly, I'm struggling to think of another trilogy that's even close. There's other like series movies that are better, but not trilogies. Like there
Well,
might be 4 or
technically,
5.
Star Wars is a series.
Yeah, but we're talking the original trilogy.
So is Lord of the
Everything
Rings.
else is
Lord of the Rings isn't. Lord of the Rings is its own trilogy, and then it's Hobbit. It's not called Lord of the Rings Hobbit. Or Hobbit Lord of the Rings. The other ones are all called Star Wars.
It's all
1,
the same
2,
universe
3.
is the point.
Yes.
They're not all called Star Wars.
And in fact, it's almost
the 9
identical
are.
to Star Wars in the sense that they made episode 4, 5, and 6, and then 1, 2, and 3, which is basically what Lord of the Rings did.
Yes, but Lord of the Rings had source material to pull from. This was Star Wars was all out of George Lucas's ass.
No.
Right? So it'd be like
It's out of
Tolkien
his
writing a
neck fat.
different book.
It's very
What's that?
It'd be like
tourism.
Tolkien just writing a new book.
Yeah, but they
I mean, George Lucas wrote it and directed it.
yep, and made 3 good movies.
Yeah, I didn't mind the first 3. They weren't as good as the second. You know, I fucking hate that it's all mixed up.
Yeah,
I liked 3, 4, and 5 the most, but
No,
I
you
didn't
liked
hate
4,
1,
5,
2,
and
6.
Yeah, whatever.
4,
Math
5,
hard.
4, 5, and 6 were the best. 1, 2, and 3 were
I guess now
Decent.
the second best
Better
compared
than
to
better than
uh,
7, 8, 9.
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I mean that's a really high bar to me.
yeah, it's a very low bar. All right, so what about? Did you guys want a Hobbit movie after the Lord of the Rings ended? And it was, God, when did the Hobbit movie come out? It came out in 2012.
I wanted, yeah. I mean,
So
I was
9 years
happy
later?
when I heard they were making it. I mean, I liked them, but they just weren't on the same level as Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. How did you feel about it being 3 movies?
Like I already said, I think it was just them wanting more money,
Sure,
and
but
it came off that way.
Okay, so you were originally thinking that to begin with. It
Yeah.
wasn't like after you watched it, you went, "Oh, this was definitely done for
I
more
kept
money."
seeing scenes and like, what's going on? Like, what are we doing here? It's still going. And then when I'd see scenes that like, you know, fit what actually happened, I enjoyed it. Like when they were in the barrels, I loved that because I
Yeah.
remember vividly reading that. The trolls and deciding how they're gonna eat them and turning to stone. I remember those. Like those are the scenes that I was excited to see. The other crap that they just made up, not so much. So
Well, you got to add a lot when you're talking about like 9 hours worth of movie.
yeah.
What about you, Mike? Were you excited when you heard that there was going to be a Hobbit movies coming out?
I don't know if I'd really say like excited that they were coming out. I wanted to watch them. Those ones I did watch in the movie theaters. I didn't watch the first 3. But
Did it backwards.
right. But I mean, I didn't really go to the movies in 2001
I know. I'm just saying, like,
because I was like
the originals
13.
would have been better
the ones
to see in
go
theater.
to, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But
But-
what about when you heard they were going to do 3 again? 3 movies.
I like more than less.
if you give me 2 of something that's amazing, or you give me 3 that are meh, okay, I'd rather take the 2 that are amazing.
I almost think 2 would have pissed me off more because they would have just done The Hobbit Part 1, The Hobbit Part 2, and I would be like, oh, fucking hate
Rather
this part.
than part 1, part... Oh, besides, you mean the fact that they have their own names?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a small distinction, but I freaking hate it when movies are like, yeah, let's split it
The
into
Deathly
2.
Hallows.
Yeah, Deathly Hallows Part 1, Part 2. I think
But
Twilight
the
did that
Desolation of Smog, and then Smog gets out for the first 5 minutes of the 3rd movie, and then dies.
too. Yeah, but
So,
I think it...
It's just... no. I hated the titles of the movies. Like, I thought they were all
I think
bad.
they all fit what actually happened, though. Like, Battle of 5 Armies made sense. Desolation of Smog. And then Unexpected Journey was just the name of the Bilbo's book he was writing, so it made sense. But
Oh, I did like... and
well,
I
that's also flashback to the regular Lord of the Rings, like when he's telling...
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what
that
I'm
was going to
saying.
be
It's
my
the name of his
question.
book.
What did
Yeah.
you guys think about their way of explaining the fact this is a prequel, even though the book got released first, by explaining it as Bilbo's story?
I thought the first movie was arguably, I mean, it might not have had the most action, but it was the best and most accurate to the source material, and I liked it the most.
Yeah, I'd probably say
Unexpected
that.
Journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did the best at like they explained, this is a prequel really well in the beginning. I mean, it's a jokier story, so I knew that going in. I loved the stuff with like the dwarves in his house. Like
Yeah.
that was great. I got really excited too because when they announced it, you start to find out who's going to be in it. And there's the actor from that show we watched, Being Human, that's in it, that plays Philly or Killy. I can't remember which one is which. But you remember, he plays, he was in the British Being Human. He played Aiden, I think his name was. The vampire.
In the British version or the American
The British version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't even know you watched that, but all right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he was in it. He was the one who fell in love with the elf girl.
Oh, him.
Yeah. He's in Poldark, too.
That's
but
the
I've never
same actor?
Yes. There's
I'll
a
still-
lot of actors actually who play the dwarves that you'd be surprised that you
Or
recognize
from other
because
things,
obviously
yeah.
they have a lot of prosthetics.
Right.
But
I'm going to have to look that up after because that just...
the only actor I'm not like a huge fan of, but I think he did good in that was Lee Pace, who played Thranduil, the elf king of the woods guy.
Oh, I thought he did fine in the...
I said he
yeah,
did
yeah.
good, but I'm just not usually a huge fan of him.
Thorin.
Thorn was good, yeah. I thought you were asking if that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, who's it? That was...
No, I was talking about the elf king, Legolas's father.
Oh, yeah.
Thranduil. Thranduil.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say his name.
I lost my train of thought on what we were talking about. I asked a question.
Yeah, it was a bad question. So let's
That's
just move on.
fair. So
what about
moving-
your favorite character from any of them? That's a
Gandalf.
tough one. What, Gandalf? Oh, it's hard not to
Although
like
I
Gandalf
like
just because Ian
Aragorn,
McKellen did
though.
it. I know, Aragorn. That's what I'm saying. It's a hard question.
Aragorn's more relatable.
I mean, Tolkien always said Samwise Gamgee was the true hero of the story. But
Yeah.
Sauron.
Sauron?
Yep. There we go.
Sarah on. It sounded like you said.
Sarah off.
No, he's not your favorite.
No. It's probably either Gandalf or God, I liked Pip.
Pippin?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he was probably the best, like, comic relief of the whole series.
Yeah. Well, I liked when it was Pip and is it Mary?
Mary.
Mary, yeah.
Yeah, get kidnapped by like the orcs.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like that whole scene is funny and terrifying at the same time.
What is it? Mary Doc, Brandybuck, and Pippin Took? Peregrine Took
Took.
is his
Yeah.
real name. Yeah.
Peregrine Took.
Samwise Gamgee, Frodo Baggins. Yeah.
What about you, Mike? Was yours Gandalf or was yours the other one or both? Or you're like
I'm just a
50-50?
big fan of wizards. It's
Yeah.
got to be Gandalf.
Well, for me, like,
Although Saruman is cool.
I don't think Gandalf was my favorite when I read the books, but Ian McKellen was just like
Yeah, he's
perfect.
He's a great actor.
So I in the movies, I'd probably have to say Gandalf. It's funny though because he wasn't gonna be my favorite till because I was thinking of just like the universe of it,
Yeah.
not the movies specifically, but yeah, I mean he was great. I mean, there's a case to be made too that I'm blanking on his name. The guy who plays young Bilbo.
Oh, what is your
Freeman,
name?
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, Martin Freeman.
I loved him as Bilbo too. Like,
yeah, it was good.
He did really good as
Yeah.
that.
not my favorite movies, but he was just a really good actor.
I still
in
love
role.
that Benedict Cumberbatch was the voice of Smaug.
Smaug.
Yeah.
And then both those two are in the Sherlock BBC
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
There were tons of memes because in the Sherlock show, Sherlock was always doing crazy shit, and Martin Freeman's character playing Watson was always yelling at Holmes like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Why are you a dragon? It's for a case."
Yeah.
Like there was
yeah.
all those memes everywhere, which I loved. Just because I loved the BBC Sherlock. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of Smaug in this at all. Like I didn't like it. I didn't feel like I know it was very identical to the book in the sense of he doesn't really have that much, even though it's this big present throughout, or the big known presence. It just didn't really. It felt very anticlimactic to have him fly out at the end of the second movie and then die in the first like 5 or 10 minutes of the third movie. It just. I figured if you're gonna do that, at least do it at the end.
Star Wars. I'm realizing this more and more. Second movie, you have Count Dooku the whole time. Dies in 3 minutes into the third movie, Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, you mean the prequels?
Yeah, well, that's what this is. Hobbit was prequels.
Well, sure.
I'm saying
Yeah.
literally
So
it follows the same
It really
timeline.
builds up for like the third movie though. Like I thought that was a great scene. He was like getting ready to burn the town, and then he does it in the third movie. It's a great way to start off a movie too.
It felt, at least to me, it felt very anticlimactic because I would have liked to see that at the end of the second one, just because there was all the build up for it. He was finally leaving there, and
What's the name of the third movie?
Battle.
They could have
Battle
changed
of
the
Five
names.
Armies, yeah.
Oh, so the main part of the movie should be about the five armies, right?
That's why if the dragon dies at the end of the second one, the whole third one is about the five.
Right, but you don't
armies.
build up to the third one. Like, what's going to make people want to go to the third one? Oh, the dragon's dead.
So
Well, maybe
you're
I'll watch
telling
the
me
third
that
one.
I got pulled in on a lie, thinking I'm going to see a dragon, and he dies in the first 7 minutes.
It is a cliffhanger, yes. That is
I-
how
I
it's
also
so
didn't
bad.
think of those movies as like any of them, even the Lord of the Rings movies, as distinct. I looked at them as like parts.
Right.
Sure.
So it's not like you watch this by itself and then you're done. It's basically just we can't make a 6-hour long movie, so we're just gonna make it part 1, part 2, part 3, and
Sure.
we're just gonna give them other names.
But
so
to end the second part there, to pick it up, to begin the third part, and end the giant part of the second part in the first couple minutes,
see, I thought
I
it
just felt
ended
like that
on-
was a slap in the face.
I think it ended on like a cliffhanger, which
Right, exactly.
I
That's
can
what I'm
understand
saying.
why that feels like a slap on the face, but I think it was a good draw.
Also
and,
ended
like,
on a terrible line.
I don't remember how it
He
ended.
goes like, "Oh no," is all Bilbo says as Smaug flies off.
I don't remember that, but
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with you on it. But at the same time, I don't.
It's either "Oh
remember if
no"
that's
or
a-
"What have I done?" One of those. But either way, that's
What
not
have we done?
It might have been "What have we done?"
That's perfect.
No, it's not. It's perfect if that's the whole movie of
Yeah,
the
because now
third
you're like,
movie.
what is a dragon going to do?
What is gonna happen? Oh,
Yeah.
5 minutes into the new movie I just paid for. Oh, they fixed it. Okay,
It's way more than 5 minutes.
it's 10
Well,
minutes.
it's also not like they fix it without a cost. Like,
Sure,
he
it
literally
burns most of the
down
city.
whole town.
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas in Revenge of the Sith, Count Dooku just dies with like no real.
No fanfare.
Yeah, there's just nothing.
Right,
I
and
hated
it's-
that. I
there's
walked
a
out
lot
of that movie when it
There's
first.
a lot
happened.
to this scene too. I mean, you see the guy that finally shoots him down.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be a good climactic ending of the second one? Because you got all of his build. During
right,
that
but that
second
just
movie.
like ends it.
It's so you want it to build the second movie end, and then to get him for a little bit more, and then it end again.
The Hobbit.
It's like the
2
same-
cock tease for KJ.
It's like the same thing as like Empire Strikes Back. Like Han is frozen in carbonite. They're
Yeah, that's
all
true.
scattered. Like that's quite a cliffhanger to leave on.
There's no big like climactic ending. Luke gets his butt kicked and he runs away.
Yeah. And Han is frozen in carbonite. The Empire struck back. You know what I mean?
It just wasn't good when you build the whole movie around the dragon basically, and then
And then
The
leave it on the
dragon
dragon.
leave it on the dragon, and then the dragon immediately dies.
Well, they got to kill him eventually. They have a whole battle to prepare for.
So kill him at the end of the second. Like, it shouldn't be this hard.
but then you don't have the climax.
You do have the climax in the second.
I want my cake now!
Well, no, if you're going to build up this big giant thing, you'll see it next year. But you're only going to see 10 minutes of it. So all this build up with this dragon, very anticlimactic.
It's a great way to start.
KJ just wanted to see the dragon climax, and he
That's
was
what I'm
upset he
saying.
had to wait a year to see it.
He was holding all that gold. He should have been climaxing everywhere.
Hey-oh!
Yikes.
Do you think that the Hobbit movies ruined anything for the original Lord of the Rings movie trilogy? Or do you think it just added to it? Like, because there's an argument to be made that the sequels for Star Wars have taken away from Star Wars. Do you think The Hobbit took away anything from Lord of the Rings?
No, and the sequels from Star Wars don't take anything away if you just pretend they don't exist, which is what I've been doing ever since.
That means they take them.
No,
it takes
'cause
away.
It didn't happen.
It did happen.
No, in my head, because I was smart enough to read the books a long time ago, I'm living in the expanded universe where Luke isn't a complete waste of space. It's great. You should join me. It's a lot better than what they came up with in the movies.
Doesn't he have like a kid, like Mara? Who's Mara Jade?
Mara Jade and him have a kid, Ben
Yeah.
Skywalker. Great kid. Jason and Jaina Solo are his niece and nephew from Han and Leia. Han and Leia have another kid named Anakin. Chewie, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, that's not.
Doesn't Chewie, does the Millennium Falcon get destroyed?
No, Chewie dies saving people on a planet that's being destroyed, and he like
You're still proving my point here.
throws a kid onto the Millennium Falcon loading dock, and then as the planet is being crumbled beneath him, he just lets out a roar. It's fucking a great scene. I remember reading that paragraph, the last
It's a
paragraph where
great
Chewbacca
scene
dies.
in a book.
I know, but you could just vividly picture it. The writer, I want to say it was James Luceno, but I could be wrong. I think it's called Star by Star. It's the first book in the New Jedi Order series, but so good.
You're still proving my point here because you have this other thing you're clinging on to. So you're trying to ignore the cinematic universe. So it took away from the cinematic universe it gave you. So did Hobbit take away anything from Lord of the Rings? That's the question.
No, Hobbit was fine in my book.
Okay.
But-
We don't not about Star Wars. So
Star
The
Wars.
Hobbit was fine as a book. Wink.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike? Was the Hobbit trilogy, did it take away anything from the Lord of the Rings series? Did it add to it for you?
I think it added to it. I think it is, like I said, seeing him writing the book at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Rings, and then like actually seeing the story that he's writing about is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Where he finds the ring, he first has the first encounter with Gollum, and you see a lot more of Middle Earth. You see like the underbelly where the goblins are. So I think it's wicked cool.
I also like that they had some of the characters reprise their roles even in the prequel for the movie. Like Legolas reprised his role.
Galadriel.
I love that part of it, that they were able to do that. But
What the
yeah, I
heck
don't think
is-
it added to it. Or I don't think it hurt it. If anything, it added to it, which is what you kind of want another trilogy, whether it's a sequel or a prequel, to do.
Elrond is the name of the Hugo Weaving's character.
Elrond, yeah.
Rivendell.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of it earlier because he reprised his role too. So, and then you had Christopher Lee and Ian McKellen, obviously too. But
Yeah.
yeah, that fight with the wraiths was kind of neat, although not nearly as good as the Lord of the Rings one. But
If you had to, you yourself, if you were going to do something, let's say they weren't doing Rings of Power, and you got to choose what the next adaptation of Lord of the Rings would have been, would you do something more towards the future of after Lord of the Rings? Would you have done something in between Hobbit and Lord of the Rings? Or would you have done like what they're doing now with Rings of Power and done the past?
so is the Rings of Power is going to end presumably with the first battle with
We have
Sauron?
no idea.
Okay, well, I guess that's what I would want. I'd want the show that leads up to that battle.
Leads up to it and shows it.
Yeah,
Okay.
in more detail. Yep. I
What
want to see
about-
Isildur. I want to see, Elrond and the other elf there that I can't think of.
But
his
because
name.
it's been talked about in the
Hamel or
books
something.
and talked about in the movies and kind of set the stage for it, you just want to actually see it in live action.
Yeah, well, I just think that from everything I remember from the books, that was probably the next coolest, most badass thing to see would be the build up to that great war.
So, with there not being books after the fact, though, would you be interested to see what happened after Lord of the Rings?
Nothing happens. It's the third age. You're in the third age of man.
Sure, but something happened literally the next day after they dropped the ring in. So, would you
You
be
see that at
interested-
the end of Fellowship, like
yeah,
Aragorn
at the
becomes
end of
old.
Return of the King.
Right, that's what I meant.
Well, sure, but they don't show you it all. They give you little,
I
hey,
mean,
he's still alive. This is happening.
The answer is
These guys
no.
got on
Yeah,
a boat.
that feels like
the
nothing
answer
is
is
going
probably
on.
no, only
Okay.
because the excitement would be to see where the characters go from there, and you have Frodo and
Bilbo, Gandalf.
leaving.
Yeah.
Aragorn, we know ages out at some point. I don't know. I just don't know like what else, because they make it look like everything's happy after that.
Yeah, it's the age of men. It's the age of peace.
Yeah, so I don't know what they're gonna see. Small skirmishes with goblins and stuff. Like, how exciting would that be after they just fought like the?
Well, I mean,
Dark
technically
Lord of the
speaking, if you're
universe.
doing your own version, you could have something happen where something bad happens again.
Nah, I just don't think Lord of the Rings is set up like that. I think Game of Thrones, for instance, has a lot more avenues it can go down
For
to.
after?
Yeah,
Yeah.
after, before, et cetera, et cetera.
This one is mostly just the before that you're interested in because there's so much stuff that happened that got us to the point of Hobbit and got us to the point of Lord of the Rings.
Well, and it's also one of those things. Lord of the Rings was set up so the history that happens before and like the language was stuff that Tolkien like came up with pretty much before anything else. And so it's cool to like know what happened before, but I don't even want to go any further back. So like they can do the Second Age and have it lead up to the Battle of Sauron at some point. But like I don't want to know about all the other crap from the Silmarillion. It's just more like historical reference opposed to like actual stories that you want to watch. So
What about you, Mike? Same thing. You'd rather have something.
It would
Like
have
they're
to be
doing in the
prequel, yeah,
past.
because
Yeah.
anything like after that is just like the age of men. So
they do have books. I can't remember what they're called, but they're basically like other adventures of Bilbo Baggins. That they could make a series
So a
of or
sequel
something.
of Hobbit, but before Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
So within that 100 years.
Yeah. So I think that would be kind of interesting. I doubt it would be a movie worthy. I honestly, I think I read one of them, but it was so long ago. But I think it could be like a TV series or something, like on Amazon or
Yeah.
if they own the rights now or whatever.
Yeah, I don't see them doing something like that unless this show blows up and makes them their money back and then some.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, the show has to be very successful, or
And also, how do you judge that success when you're talking about Amazon? Because
you mean on streaming?
Yeah, because most people have it'll be by watches, sure,
Yeah.
but do watches equate to money? No.
Merchandising.
Well,
Merchandising, sure, but like most people have Amazon Prime because of the shipping. So it's not like these other shows where Netflix can judge how many new subscribers they got or how many hours it was watched, yada yada. Most people have Prime because of the shipping. So how are you judging how much this is worth your while?
Yeah. Oh. I think it's there. I mean, you could just basically base it on the idea that views mean you have content that users want,
Sure.
and then use that as a driving factor for. Also, Jeff Bezos doesn't care.
He
He's like-
does.
he's like, I just shit out the money.
They basically had said that this show is going to dictate how they move forward with their streaming service.
Well, I
There
don't-
could be technically, like, if this show bombs horribly, maybe we get no more Amazon Prime.
what, like TV series?
Yeah, no more Amazon Prime
they're
streaming.
not
I
gonna
would
stop
highly
making
doubt that.
movies.
I think they would just not spend a shit ton of money on limited content.
I feel like everything they do is they're spending money, just not this much. Like this much, the $250 million doesn't even touch production, cast, CGI, any of that. That's literally the rights.
Right.
Yeah, but that also sets them up probably for other series they can do.
Game of Thrones can do it for
It's a
fraction of the
five-year
price.
partnership, by the way, with Amazon.
Jesus. They're
Yeah.
just going to start busting out shitty shows while they can.
I feel like if it does well, or even if it doesn't do like very well, I still think that Amazon is going to have a separate streaming cost. I think you're going to have Amazon shipping, and you're going to have Amazon thing.
You
I think
mean
they're
that they wouldn't get rid of it completely? They'd just separate it between the two?
as a streaming service. I think that's what's coming. Like Netflix is up to $20 a thing. I think you're going to see, hey, would you also like Amazon streaming with your Amazon Prime? It's $4.99.
Either that or we'll just see a price increase finally.
Well, that's what they've been doing. Almost every year there's been like a price increase on Amazon Prime.
Really?
Yeah. It
I feel like
used
they
to
must
be,
not notify me then. I have it on auto draft.
Yeah, they don't. They probably send you one thing saying, hey, we're going to renew your subscription. Hey, by the way, it's also an extra X amount of dollars this year. Because it went up from like 90 to 100 to 110. We're either at 120 or 130 right now.
Jeez.
a year.
I don't even know what I spent.
Yeah, which really isn't that much when you talk about if you're doing free shipping. Like, it's really not
I do
that
order
much.
enough to justify it, probably. Yeah.
Even without a streaming service, let alone The Boys, Invincible, Upload, shows like that we watch there for free. Like, it just doesn't really matter. All right, so now we're quite a bit into this podcast, so let's revert back to Rings of Power, because that technically debuts tomorrow from when we're recording, which will be a few days after, or a few days before Labor Day. So what are we thinking? I know you guys are kind of thinking that you're on the opposite side of the spectrum of going, but are your expectations neutral? Are they high? Are they low? Do they need to be at a certain level for it to be a success for you?
I hope it's good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
I also hope that it's good.
Nobody hopes it's very good, though. Just good is the all you want.
I'll take
Good.
what I can get.
It has to be right. It has to be above the good bar.
Just above it.
Yeah.
Even just a tad bit above.
Yeah, as long as it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be good. We'll find out tonight when it airs.
Doesn't it air tomorrow?
No, it airs tonight at 9
is-
p.m.
It is currently airing.
Yeah, it's on the air right now.
We gotta go.
Doesn't it air Fridays? Once a week? Every Friday?
I have no idea, but it premieres tonight.
All right.
So it's Friday, East Coast, Thursday, West Coast, except for tonight, which is a premiere, and it's 2 episodes.
I did know about the 2 episodes, but I didn't
Yeah.
realize that it was tonight. I thought it was tomorrow.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
9 p.m. Thursday, West Coast, 12 a.m. Friday.
For every
Next week.
Yeah, next week. All right.
So,
So-
it will normally air Fridays.
Yeah,
At midnight.
Okay.
at midnight. So basically for us, whenever Friday,
Oh,
like
that's
most
cool.
things. So wrapping this up then, so we can all potentially go and watch it
Oh,
tonight.
we will.
Any closing thoughts in regards to Lord of the Rings or Hobbit or even Power of the Rings? Start with Mike.
I think it...
I said start with Mike.
Oh, sorry. I think we're going to say the same thing.
And cue.
They're good.
It was good.
But no, like regular closing thoughts about the whole series in general. Or
Extremely
I
good.
fucking hate
A
you.
very good one.
You were gonna say something else.
No, that's really what I was
Oh,
gonna
is that
say.
really what you
Yeah.
were gonna do?
Yeah, that's why I was just gonna say it as a joke, and then
Oh,
but
gosh,
then I
hate
knew
you
he
all.
was going to too. When I made eye contact across the table, we both knew we were gonna piss off KJ.
For me, it is good, but it's also one of those.
Gotcha.
You said it.
You notice
you
how
said
we're
it.
adding more? It's also one of those to
We
me
added
that
more.
if
Very.
they do, like let's say this show is great and because of it, it spawns more, I'll probably at least give them a shot. And I feel like you guys will too with liking this series and everything. Almost no matter what comes out, you'll probably give it a shot. Doesn't mean you'll keep watching it if it's garbage, but you'll give it a
Well,
chance.
I mean, it's kind of way too early to say with this show. Like you're saying, if the show is good, we will give other shows a chance.
Yeah, or just like, let's say the show didn't exist and you just heard a Lord of the Rings show is going to come out.
Oh yeah,
You'd
well,
try
I'd give it a chance like
Yeah,
I'm this. But if
that's
this
what I'm
show
saying.
sucks, then I don't know.
It
how I
might,
feel.
yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
if they're made by Amazon. Like,
Sure, yeah. I definitely think if a different company made it. Although you look at Disney that did, what was it called? Book of Boba Fett, which I didn't like, but The Mandalorian was great, and then Obi-Wan was good. So, but I guess you have to have some credit in the bank first. So if their first season was good and their second season was crap, and you heard they were doing a new season, a brand new series on Amazon, you'd probably give it a shot if the first season was good.
yeah, if there's something to at least hold the candle.
Right.
Yeah, for their-
I feel like this is going to be one of those like one and done series, though.
You
I
think
feel like
it's definitely not? They have a 5-year contract with Tolkien Estate. Amazon does.
Yeah, but it might just be this one series for 5 years.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying something else. But yes, it could just be this. But usually, what happens with a lot of different companies, if they're successful, they'll then look to add to it because obviously you can make more money that way.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if there's enough story though.
that's the thing. Like, I don't want them to just like, I don't know.
Be
There's
adding shit.
not a ton. Like I was trying to say earlier, a lot of the prequel stories that we have are more like
Filler.
historical reference points for the Lord of the Rings. They're not books where you could have a whole story laid out for you. So it'd
Sure,
be a
so
lot
they
of,
have to do it themselves.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we've seen how that's worked with Game of Thrones and stuff.
Well, sure, but House of Dragon is basically doing it.
No, House of Dragon, it has more involvement from George R.R. Martin than any other series, and there's a book called Fire and Blood that it's based off of.
One season, but let alone as we keep going.
Well, I know, but George R.R. Martin's basically a showrunner on the show.
I don't think he's actual showrunner, but
I'm not
I
saying
think he's
he
an
is, but
executive producer.
they're actually having him sit on set
Yeah.
and say, which he thought he was going to be on Game of Thrones.
He
and-
was basically for the first 2 seasons,
Yeah,
and then
then they-
as soon as that happened, then they slowly backed him off, back
and then
until
that's-
like season 6, and they're like, "Well, you don't have a book out, so
Yeah, they just
just gonna keep
slowly
doing our
got
thing."
worse and worse when they stopped.
6 was
including him.
fine, or no, 5 was fine, 6
Yeah.
was meh, 7 was bad.
So only 3 of the seasons of the 8 were bad, and all of them were with less George R.R.
Well,
Martin
5
input.
wasn't bad. 5 was great.
I said 3, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, no, there wasn't. Was there 8 seasons?
Yeah, the 8th season is the one we all hate.
Oh yes, okay, so that
I
is
didn't
season
hate it.
8. You're right. You're
Yeah.
right. So they have 5 books, so that's 5 seasons. So 6, 7, and 8. 6 is fine. There's nothing wrong with 6. 7 is where it gets meh, and 8 it gets shit.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It trended
One,
downward
yeah.
the second they got rid of George R.R. Martin.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
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 Well, okay.
Well,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, technically, if you want to think about it, yeah. I
Yeah.
also didn't
Yeah,
realize.
you know, now that I think about it,
until
you're 100%
after-
right, but I'm going to trail off like
No,
you might
I
not
didn't
be.
think that. I didn't know until after the series ended that he didn't have anything to do with it. Like towards the tail end, I only heard about the beginning, first couple seasons where he was very involved.
Yeah, he's
maybe
been-
he should have got his shit together and write that book faster.
You're not wrong.
Well, I mean, even just having him on there as like, because there were times of the Harry Potter series where they had Rowling or whatever give them like insights, even though she hadn't written the future books yet, about like where she was taking characters so that they could develop arcs for that character.
Yes, but she was also. I'm pretty sure there was something to do with her contract where she was involved in everything anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I just mean they could have done something similar with George R.R. Martin, even if he hadn't written the books yet. So like, the guy who played Snape, and I'm blanking on his name.
Alan Rickman.
Rickman.
Alan Rickman.
Yeah, I remember him asking the
Well,
question.
it's not even that he asked. She came and told him what the
I
future
feel
of
like
his
he
characters.
asked. I could have swore there's an interview where he says that he went and asked her because he wanted to know how to play a certain scene.
Yeah, well, she told him like his fate, basically,
Yeah.
so that he would know that he actually cared for Harry Potter. Well,
Yeah.
cared for him.
His
adjacent.
mother.
Yeah.
I care for you because I really wanted your mom.
But it's funny because you look back at scenes in the previous movies and you can see that carried forward. That's why it's
I
important.
always thought that he did. Like I never to me.
You always thought he loved her mother?
No, always thought that he cared for Harry. Like it seemed very obvious in so many different scenes where you think it's always him doing the bad thing, then you find out
Well,
it's
no,
not
yeah.
him doing the bad
I
thing.
always thought he was a good guy who
Right.
just was kind of an asshole,
Sure.
but I never knew like the reason why he was a good guy was
yeah.
because of
Yeah.
Harry's mother, and like that's why even though he despised Harry because he reminded him of James, he would
Mhm.
never do anything to hurt him because he loved Lily so
Right.
much. That's all I
Understood.
mean. Like
Yeah.
you bring George R. R. Martin in so you can have these like storylines kind of built out more completely and not suck.
Yeah, and it'd be really weird if you have a very distinct feeling for your character, whether it's Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and you think it's going somewhere, and then next thing you know, the book comes out or something else comes out, it's completely in a different direction.
Well, I kind of wonder, like, I haven't really kept up where he's at with the books for Game of Thrones, but I'm interested to see where, like, characters like Jaime, does he
Yep.
go back to Cersei and ruin his complete character
Well, we
arc,
won't
or
know for like there's supposed to be more than
we
one
won't
book
ever
that
know. He's
comes
gonna
out.
die. Look
Well,
at him.
that's
He's not
probably true.
a figure of perfect health.
I'm also wondering. There's oh god, they bring back Catelyn after she dies as
Lady Ironheart.
Yeah,
Or Iron
that they
something.
never have in the series. So I'm
Yeah,
wondering
I
how
know.
her arc plays
There's
out.
a lot of stuff that they don't have that's more like magic focused in the books that
Yeah.
they don't have in the series.
All right, so next week you guys won't be here because I will be camping, so I won't be here either. But next week we're gonna have something a
Great
little bit
sentence.
different.
Maybe cut that.
Yeah, no, we're gonna keep it in. We're
Yeah.
gonna keep the jumbled mess.
Yeah, okay.
No, next week it'll be a little bit different, a little bit of a retrospective on the podcast rather than about one specific subject. And then we'll get back to the regular recording the week after, which will, I believe, be the Orville. I think that's what's coming next.
Sweet.
Yes, I
Do
know
you know that
two
they have
are
a
excited.
blob in that show? That
They
just,
do have a blob.
It's
I also know
gelatinous,
the
too.
show
Yeah.
is really boring, but we'll talk about that when we actually do the podcast in a couple weeks.